guys. We got to clear the pool room.
You're the bodyguard, aren't you?
A lot of bodyguards actually have come up and talked to me about it. You know, they felt like they were honored on some level. The job that they did was that they're not lackeys.
If they are truly bodyguards, then they're willing to sacrifice their life to save yours, which is a deep concept to me anyway, because I don't know if I could do it.
Trying to become a screenwriter for a long time, but with little success. I couldn't even get an agent. But when I wrote The Bodyguard, it was different, and I was able to get an agent. And with that, I moved out to Los Angeles. And the agent who took me on was also very optimistic about it and thought, you know, he was going to sell it right away, but he couldn't sell it, and he was tenacious, to his credit, about taking it around for 2 years, and it was rejected 67 times.
This was something that Larry Kasdan had written as a spec script when he was a copywriter in 1975 for Steve McQueen and Diana Ross, and it hadn't got made, and it went through, God knows how many is that, 12 screenplays written and rewritten by Larry.
And during that time, my fortunes improved. I became a director. Kevin Costner, he had read The Bodyguard, and he said, I want to make this movie. Well, this was not a movie star who was saying this. This was just a young actor who I really liked. I said, well, you know, let's see what happens. And a couple years later, he was a huge star. And he never let go of the idea of making the script.
I thought Larry was such a great writer, I asked if I could read it. And I read it, and I so responded to him and his writing, and I just thought it was like weird that no one would have made it. It was just so really good.
The minute you read Bodyguard the first time, you understand why Kevin would like it. I mean, that character of Frank Farmer, from first act to the end, I felt like that made sense.
And we talked a lot about revisions, which I was ready to do, but Kevin was very committed to the original script.
It went through a lot of incarnations. You know, the script got darker, it got more and more violent. The Kennedy assassination, which is in Frank's backstory, became the Reagan assassination attempt, but it lacked the sweetness. So I said, you know, why don't you go back and essentially just do a few tweaks to this, but make this first thing, it has the kind of conviction of somebody writing a script that they believe in. And that's essentially the movie we made.
Well, in hindsight, I think Kevin's clout to push some of these things was very important, because it's never easy to piece films together. And The Bodyguard had been around a long, long time. And a lot of times when these things, you try to dust them off, it takes a while to get them going. It's harder than a fresh picture that's come in. This has sat in the vaults, and to move it along quickly, Kevin, with the clout he had, it gets everybody moving.
You know, I wanted Larry to direct it because Larry had written it. You know, but I think Larry in his mind had moved somewhere else, and Mick Jackson came in and did a really nice job.
And he'd come to the United States and made L.A. Story with Steve Martin, who I knew, and I thought that was a very entertaining movie and had a nice feel for the city.
I got a call from Kevin Costner. Picked up the phone, it was Kevin Costner, saying, do you want to direct this large movie? And I said, gulp, yes, please.
Would have been a real mistake, and so I didn't even want to risk creating a scene like that.
A good example of a certain kind of thing that we do in American movies, where you know who the hero is, you know what kind of guy he is, and you're not surprised when the woman is attracted to him. And in this case, when I had written it, the idea was that the woman character would be just as strong as this quiet bodyguard who was protecting her, so that when they had their disagreements and then they're coming together, it meant something, because they were both very formidable, you know, and we were able to pull that off.
That's who Frank was, and to try to make him more would have been a mistake, and Larry's writing made him incredibly interesting to watch, and also, in a sense, made you, if you're a woman, trust this man, and if you're a guy, wish that you would say things in the heat of battle the way Frank would say things.
Kevin's character, Frank Farmer, is trying to do what he's doing in the face of almost insuperable odds. He's trying to protect someone who knows no restraints in her personal behavior, who is out there. And so I tried to make the scenes where he's supposed to be guarding her in a public place very crowded and chaotic.
Mostly, I think, for me, was seeing Kevin as Frank Farmer. When I saw his haircut and I saw his suit, I thought, Kevin has understood this thing perfectly now, you know, for 12 or 15 years, you know, and he's going to do great with this. And that was, to me, the most satisfying part of the whole movie.
So Kevin walks in the door, and he was white walls and had really trimmed it all off. But he walked in, and I'm like, what have you done?
I cut it short on purpose for the way I wanted it to be, and I liked it for the part. I really liked it. Yeah, I got a lot of grief over Bodyguard for my haircut, and then for the last 15 years, everybody's worn their hair that way.
Kevin is very generous in the movie. He gives Whitney every scene he can. He's never competing with her for the attention scene. He is Frank Farmer fully in that he wants to disappear.
I've had that kind of protection around me, so I know what that's all about. And it's weird, and Rachel thinks it's weird, you know. Whitney thinks it's weird.
Kevin pushed very hard on some scenes to say, I need to get more out of you, Whitney. And she would say, I'm there for you. So I think the two of them, they got along famously. I mean, they really did. It is one of those nice stories.
I think the success of Bodyguard was the strength of what Larry wrote between Frank and Rachel. And of course we had a song that just really tied it all together in a way, but you can't just get a great song. And Bodyguard was very much about language.
I think Rachel Marin is lonely in the crowd of all the people who swirl around her, all her press people and advisors and makeup people. In the middle of that is someone who's alone and recognizes a kind of strength and individuality in Frank. And I think that's part of the bond that establishes between the two of them in the movie.
She was a woman. She was nothing more than a woman, a talented, egotistical woman that was impossible to take your eyes off of.
This was about two people who fall in love. And also there's a collision of two worlds. There's the watcher and the watched. Frank Farmer is the invisible man watching his client, and actually not watching his client, but watching the crowds, not watching his client.
Rachel and Frank are two different people who think differently about life. Somehow their paths get crossed, and he's introduced to her world and she's introduced to his. Well, they're not very happy about either one.
Kevin, I thought, played beautifully. Let you see that uncertainty, that desperation sometimes when the face is a mask of saying, I'm in control, I'm watchful, I'm guarding this person, but when things start to get a little crazy, you can see some of that in the eyes. And I think when he starts to fall in love with Rachel, you see that, I think, beautifully understated. And I love working with the two. I thought the chemistry between the two of them was great.
Right from the beginning, on my first handwritten draft, there's a lot of talk about the songs, including the titles.
Always Love You, over and over again, 24 hours a day, so loudly that the floorboards shook in the apartment next door, and the person next door sued them and brought in a music psychologist who said, yes, that repeated 4-chord structure of I Will Always Love You does count as psychological torture. I don't think of it that way. I can't hear that without hearing the movie, seeing the movie.
I had always felt that there were certain problems with the story, and one of the reasons I hadn't directed it was I wasn't sure exactly how to solve those problems.
I would have kept the Academy Awards, would have. But instead of having the act occur there, I would have had everything that Larry had going on except the action.
The Oscars, I had to plan that like a military operation.
This is great, like thousands of extras, you can hear the money.
I can't remember now how many cameras we had, but we were working in 3 different systems. There were the film cameras that were everywhere. Some of them were prop cameras pretending to be the cameras that were covering the Oscars, but some of them were film cameras, disguised as television cameras.
I had suggested something about 4 weeks before we started shooting, but I think it just discombobulated everybody, to be honest. I mean, and I can understand that from Mick's standpoint, which was, well, why now? I've got this thing in my head how I'm going to shoot it. But where I would have gone, to be honest, is have her separate from Frank. And at that point, she doesn't want Frank with her. At that point, they're hurrying to get into the limousines, and she's pissed, she's frustrated, and you can see her manager saying, we should wait for Frank, and she's thinking, why in the hell should we wait for Frank? Get in the car, everybody, get in the car. I'm not waiting for Frank, he's ruined my night. And so what you do is you put her in the car, the door shuts, she takes off, and as the window opens, it's our bad guy driving the car. And what he's done is he's killed that young black kid. The sinister quality, I think, would have ramped up and would have been a very bullet-like chase, a really inventive car chase that culminated with Frank just doing something very direct, but taking the actual confrontation and moving it away from the Academy Awards.
Well, I thought the movie really picked up during that moment where the band conductor said he's got a gun.
He's got a gun! He's got a gun!
The movie was kind of dull up until that point, and then it just kicked into high gear at that point. And then also my wife is in the movie getting blood splattered all over the white suit. The movie was incredible.
In the movie, I walk up there and somebody's trying to kill me. Well, that's weird, I think probably from now on, I'll probably walk up there and go, look around like, who's out there? More so Frank. Frank doesn't want to deal with it. Rachel, she don't care. She's like, I don't really care. Come on.
It's satisfying to see that this simple love story had worldwide sort of acceptance.
I went and had lunch with Quincy Jones at his house, who's another mentor of mine, during the making of the music of The Bodyguard. I've been to Quincy Jones's house twice in my life. But right out of nowhere, he invited me over for lunch, just the two of us, right? And we're sitting there having lunch, and he's just so smart, this guy. He just intuitively knows things, And he's putting his salad up to his mouth. He stops. He goes, this is going to be the most important music project you've done in your life and probably might ever do. It's like, really? Pass the ketchup.
I think the main thing that touches me about the movie is that when I'm talking to a stewardess on an airplane, and she says, what do you do and what movies? And I say The Bodyguard, I get an extra big drink. That's great.
And for a minute there, I didn't think I'd make it. I thought, God, this is just so grueling, and the scheduling. I'm not a morning person. I hate getting up in the morning. Don't talk to me till after 12. I'm that kind of person. And that was discipline. Getting up and being there and the whole thing. Just that I made it is the most rewarding experience from this movie, I think.
I'm really proud of that movie. I was proud to introduce Whitney into movies that way and show her that I was not only her friend, but that I was her colleague. I will always love her.